It's no exaggeration to say that filmmaking legend Brian De Palma has had an eclectic and often spectacular career, spanning over 50 years that have brought audiences many unforgettable and classic movies. 1976's Carrie remains an often referenced, and we're looking at you Wednesday, horror masterpiece. Crime drama Scarface is all-time gangster gold, while his first entry in the Mission Impossible franchise is still perhaps one of the strongest installments for a then young and even more sprightly Tom Cruise. However, it's De Palma's 1987 The Untouchables, an adaptation of the 1950s TV serial that focuses on the attempts to bring down crime lord Al Capone, that really shows his versatility as a director. The award-winning film features several iconic scenes that are now etched in the minds of movie fans around the globe. From the Union Station shootout with full-on baby-in-great-peril slow-mo action shot, to the much maligned but Oscar-winning performance by the late, great Sean Connery. It's a superior showcase of impeccable acting, tense showdowns, and yes, questionable Irish accents.
And don't let him clean himself till after he talks.
And it's time to see if they save that pram from crashing down those stairs here on Revisited.
So unnecessary. I'll tell you one more thing. You got an all-out prize fight, you wait till the fight's over, one guy's left standing, and that's how you know who won.
The film is loosely based upon the book of the same name from 1957, and while it was based upon real-life events, much of the actual plot of the movie was fictionalized. It follows Eliot Ness, who forms a special team of agents handpicked for their courage, moral character, and incorruptibility, nicknamed the Untouchables.
You fellas are untouchable, is that the thing? No one can get to you?
Their task is to bring down Al Capone during the Prohibition era in 1930 Chicago, America, and the movie helped to launch the careers of many of its key actors. The film stars Kevin Costner, fresh from anthology TV show Amazing Stories, as Eliot Ness, alongside Charles Martin Smith, Andy Garcia, Robert De Niro in his third collaboration with De Palma following 1968's Greetings and 1970's Hi Mom, and of course the legend that is Sean Connery, who once again defies logic and probably his director, with an accent that doesn't necessarily befit his character, and ultimately didn't stop him winning a Best Supporting Actor Oscar for the role. Hey look, if the guy can play an English king with a broad Scottish baritone burr in Robin Hood and get away with it, then fair play to the chap. The Untouchables premiered on June 2nd, 1987 in New York City, and then went on general release the following day across the rest of the United States, followed by a worldwide release a little later in the summer of the same year. The movie grossed $106.2 million internationally, with roughly half of that amount coming from the US and Canada alone, on an estimated budget of $25 million. The critical response to the movie was generally positive, and as well as Connery's Best Supporting Actor win, it was also nominated for 4 other Academy Awards for art direction, costume, and score. While many epic productions encounter issues while either in development or during production, The Untouchables went full steam ahead eventually without too much drama behind the scenes. Whilst working as an executive at Universal Pictures during the 1970s and 1980s, Ned Tannen spent years attempting to obtain the rights to Eliot Ness's life story, and it wasn't until he became head of motion pictures at Paramount, who happened to own the rights to Ness's memoirs, The Untouchables, that he was able to move the project into production. Tannen hired Art Linson to produce the film adaptation, and also David Mamet, who had already achieved some screenwriting acclaim with 1981's The Postman Always Rings Twice and 1982's The Verdict, respectively. The majority of Mamet's screenplay was used, but De Palma rewrote some sequences during production, including the aforementioned baby and tumbling pram peril Union Station sequence that was originally set in a hospital. De Palma, however, downplayed his role in the scriptwriting process, and instead gave credit to the collaboration he ultimately had with Mamet, saying that, "Being a writer myself, I don't like to take credit for the things I didn't do. I didn't develop the script, David used some of my ideas, and he didn't use some of them." While the script was being finalised, the focus for the production then turned to just exactly who could bring this eclectic group of characters to the silver screen. The 1950s TV series featured a tough portrayal of Eliot Ness by the award-winning Robert Stack, but both Brian De Palma and Art Linson wanted their incarnation of the character to be more tender and more of a vulnerable family man than what had come before. Also, various significant names had initially been considered for the cast, including Don Johnson as Ness, as well as the likes of Michael Douglas, Harrison Ford, William Hurt, Mickey Rourke, and Jeff Bridges, who had also all turned down the role. The part of Al Capone, on the other hand, was slightly more complicated to finalise than the other primary members of the production. De Palma's first choice was the legendary Robert De Niro, but his appearance in the Broadway play Cuba and His Teddy Bear threw doubt on his availability to take on the Capone role. The actor was also keen on going full-on method for the part by gaining 30 pounds in weight, as, according to De Palma, he was concerned about the shape of his face for the part. This led De Palma to approach English actor and star of Brazil in Mona Lisa, Bob Hoskins, believing that first choice De Niro would fall by the wayside. De Palma even went so far as sending Hoskins a thank you check for $200,000 for his contractual agreement. Despite De Niro eventually being given the part, Hoskins then humorously called up De Palma to ask if there were any other films he didn't want him to be in. The movie is set in 1930 during Prohibition, and gang leader and all-round Chicago kingpin Al Capone is in control of supplying illegal booze across all of the city. Elliot Ness, an agent for the Bureau of Prohibition, is tasked with putting a stop to Capone's operations. However, his first attempt at a risky liquor raid fails due to Capone being alerted to the operation by corrupt cops. He then gets an offer of help in the form of Sean Connery's Irish-American police veteran, Jimmy Malone, whose opposition to the corruption in the police leads him to suggest they recruit an officer from the academy, who was not yet being turned by Capone and his men. They recruit Andy Garcia's George Stone, and together they begin a successful campaign against Capone by raiding one of his liquor warehouses. To show his subordinates just exactly who the boss is, and to warn them of any future indiscretions, Capone brutally murders the warehouse manager with a baseball bat. The group's accountant, Oscar Wallace, played by Charles Martin Smith, discovers that Capone hasn't filed an income tax return for 4 years and devises a tax evasion case against Capone.
Try a murder for not paying his taxes?
Oh, it's better than nothing.
However, this does not go as smoothly as they hope for. A dodgy alderman offers Ness a bribe in order to halt the investigation into Capone, and when he refuses, one of the gangster's enforcers, Frank Nitti, played by excellent character actor Billy Drago, threatens to kill Ness's wife and daughter, prompting him to move them swiftly to a safe house.
Stay there!
Ness and his team continue their ongoing raids against Capone's operation, and in a subsequent operation on the Canadian border, they intercept a liquor shipment, kill several gangsters, and also capture one of Capone's bookmakers, George, who is eventually persuaded to testify against his boss. However, back in Chicago, Nitti, dressed as a policeman, kills both accountant Wallace and the newly recruited George in a police station, prompting a vengeful Ness to confront Capone at the Lexington Hotel. Malone intervenes and urges Ness to focus his attention solely on persuading the case against Capone to be kept active by the district attorney. What follows is one of the era's most iconic death scenes, and the moment in which, yes, you've guessed it, we get some slow-mo pram hurtling down the station stairs shootout action. Connery's Malone realises that Police Chief Mike Dorset was responsible for the deaths of George and Wallace, and forces Dorset to give up where Capone's accountant, Walter Payne, is hiding. However, that evening Malone is ultimately gunned down by Nitti by way of a ferocious Tommy gun attack. He lies mortally wounded, but is able to tell Ness and Stone which train Payne is taken out of Union Station to get out of town. While waiting for the accountant, Ness helps out a mother who is struggling to carry her luggage plus her baby's pram up the lobby steps. They reach the top but are confronted by Capone's men, and what follows is not only a bloody gun battle, but also a nail-biting, expertly edited tense showdown. Ultimately, although outnumbered and the odds stacked against them, Ness and Stone manage to capture Payne while keeping the mother and child alive. This is arguably the most memorable sequence from the movie. Shot in slow motion, it's unbearably tense. Unfortunate bystanders are taken out by stray bullets, and even the baby somehow survives bullets riddling its wooden pram. Shots of the pram's wheels tumbling down the stairs are intercut with bloodied corpses, and eventually, Stone stops the pram with his knee and dispatches the last of Payne's bodyguards, following Ness's orders to
Take him.
Thrilling. At the film's denouement, Ness discovers during Capone's trial that it was Nitti who murdered Malone, and after a tense chase to the courthouse roof, Ness pushes Nitti to his death, avenging the deaths of both Wallace and Malone. Capone is ultimately convicted of tax evasion and sentenced to 11 years in prison. As Ness closes up his office and leaves the police station, a reporter asks him what he'll do after the end of Prohibition, to which Ness replies,
I think I'll have a drink.
At the start of the 1980s, acclaimed film director Brian De Palma was looking for some joy at the box office, with a movie that not only filled his and the studio's bank accounts, but that also raised his profile so that he could focus on other, more personal artistic projects. Buoyed by a diverse demographic audience, the movie made back triple its production and marketing budget and was the sixth highest debut of the year. Despite the impeccable acting talent and production values on display from all involved, it's really a showcase for director De Palma's filmmaking prowess and visual trademarks. All of his tricks of the trade are on display in a dramatic, ballsy adventure that does not scrimp on the claret amongst the rising tensions between the Untouchables and Capone. De Palma is also well renowned for his Hitchcock-infused plot twists and turns, and while The Untouchables is a slight departure from the norm for the director, it is nonetheless a resounding triumph overall. A gangster tale is epic as the scale in which it is rendered. David Mamet's screenplay features everything you would come to expect from the genre. Good guys, bad guys, comedy, iconic scenes, plenty of meaty dialogue for Costner and crew to chew on, and a memorable ending. Also, for a tale that on paper at least looks like a fairly cut-and-dried battle between good and evil, Mamet throws in some complexity by showing Ness going outside of the law in order to get his man. Malone also reiterates this to Ness by saying, "You want to know how you do it? Here's how."
He pulls a knife, you pull a gun. He sends one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue. That's the Chicago way.
In simple terms, however, The Untouchables is a fantastic, if slightly flawed, gangster/adventure movie, with several tremendous set pieces, brutal and bloody action, plus a script that delivers one quotable line after another. One criticism is that it perhaps spends a little too much time on Ness's home life, with his family's presence in the film ultimately a way to further humanise the main protagonist and provide a credible threat for Capone to latch onto. Overall though, De Palma's legacy is fantastic, and The Untouchables is arguably one of his most iconic and quotable movies, even with his aforementioned Mission Impossible entry as competition. The movie opened on June 3rd in 1987 in over 1,000 screens, where it grossed $10,023,094 on its opening weekend, which was the sixth highest overall for the year. It then went on to make $76.2 million in North America alone, and interestingly, polls from the movie showed that approximately 50% of the audience for the film were women. Violent action movies such as this usually skewed more towards a male audience at the time, but the inclusion of complex relationships and it being a tale of redemption allowed audiences to forgive its excessive violence. The Untouchables also scored mostly favourably with critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, if stats from that site are anything to go by, it has an approval rating of 82% based upon reviews from 71 critics, with an average rating of 7.60 out of 10. The New York Times gave the movie a positive review, calling it a smashing work, and saying it was vulgar, violent, funny, and sometimes breathtakingly beautiful. While Empire magazine awarded it 4 out of 5 stars, praising its superb performances, exquisite direction, and also Ennio Morricone's score. The New Yorker were less impressed, however, writing that it was not a great movie, it's too banal, too morally comfortable, while Time magazine took a more positive slant on the film, suggesting it was one of the best movies of 1987. Whatever your view of the movie is, and please let us know in the comments section below, there's no denying the fact that De Palma has crafted a beautifully shot and unforgettable tale of good versus evil, police corruption, and slow-motion pram peril. And not only did the bank balance of his surely improve, so did his credentials as a respected mainstream and artistic director.
Get out of here. You're nothing but a lot of talking about.
Here ended the lesson.
Thank you for watching our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe to our JoBlo Originals YouTube channel, tell your friends who like this sort of content, and turn on the bell to receive notifications of all our latest videos. We're an independent company and we appreciate all of your support.